all for coming tonight, or I guess viewing tonight. We are here to talk about life after CHS, our junior planning night. We recognize that this isn't necessarily a night or time that always works for everyone. Now there's a basketball game tonight and things going on. So we are currently recording this, and our office, we will edit this down and send this out, hopefully and ideally by the end of this week, so that you have this content. So if you know folks who are unable to attend tonight, or you are worried about furiously scribbling down notes, please know we will share this recording out with you all, including the slides and some other important, we'll kind of have a nice succinct message to go out that includes a bunch of information for kind of one-stop shopping related to this as we dive into this exciting time for juniors. So without further ado, I will kind of dive in here. We're going to first start off with an agenda so you kind of know what to expect. Folks, please feel free to log on, log off, however you need to. This is a live stream, so you will not be interrupting or disrupting if you need to take care of some things. Or log on off again. All these items are being recorded. So we're going to go over junior conference, what to expect with that, our post-Chatham pathways that are available to our students, some college placement trends, college info, updates using Naviance, and some upcoming events and resources in a to-do. Basically, the goal is to kind of just have the full idea of all the options available to you as a student looking, believe it or not, to leave Chatham in a short time frame, shorter than you may think, but also make sure you have the abundance of information and try to deliver this all succinctly to you, because it is a lot of information. And please note, we will be going over all of this with you in your junior conference. You'll be hearing it again in a senior conference that you'll be getting, presentations from myself. So you'll have plenty of times to go over this. The goal really is for you to hear this information and kind of start digesting it. So don't stress if you haven't already really fully digested that information. And for those who do not know, I was out on maternity leave. I guess I should have started with this. My name is Miss Slate. I'm happy to be returning back from that leave. And don't worry, we have not started college planning for my 5-month-old just yet. But we are certainly excited to be back and help you all with this information. Quick disclaimer too, a lot of the conversation of this evening, we want to focus on all those pathways available to students, but a majority, because it is so dense in content, is going to be about a college process. So as you saw in that agenda, we're going to talk about all the pathways, and then we'll be trickling over to more of a college-centric conversation. So if that doesn't apply to you, like I said earlier, feel free to log on or off. So junior conferences is one of those big conferences that we will starting actually this Monday coming up and going all the way through March. So really a time frame that works best for you. In order to schedule your junior conference, you would have received information through email, students through Schoology, and your Gmail account about making an appointment through the Genesis parent portal. You'll schedule your date and time. You'll mark your calendars, obviously a time that works well for you and is a free period for your student. And please note that the portal closes on January 5th. So very soon we will be closing that portal, and then you'll need to be reaching out with your students, or if you're the student, your counselor directly to schedule that. If you miss that window, that is okay, but please reach out to your counselors that you do get that time, because this is a nice dedicated time for you to go over your plans, your goals, to have really specific conversations rather than those generalized conversations, kind of like what we're doing tonight. It's a really generalized conversation. So the goal, I'm not going to read everything to you verbatim on these slides, as I know you all certainly would be able to do that. But really the goal is to reduce the stress of navigating this process, to explore and talk about different pathways. And as I said, really personalize that. So we're going to go over materials that you're going to need going into the fall if college is your choice, testing, using our college and career tool Naviance, which is a really super helpful tool, talking about financial aid. So a lot of those different things. I will say the difference with the junior conference and the senior conference, and then information that you'll start getting as juniors, becoming rising seniors towards the end of, as we hit the summer months. This conversation is more about college searching, thinking about career, those types of things, versus your senior conference is going to be more heavily focused on if college is your path, the application process, things like that. So we won't be covering necessarily, application nitty gritty information in this. We'll be going over kind of just that first search. We have a lot of resources which we can point you to, as I said, in our summary email with all of this stuff as well. But just to kind of help differentiate that, you will have a senior conference, very thorough, just like this junior conference. And that's where you're really going to be talking about procedural stuff while we're really talking about kind of big picture here. So thinking, we really, because it is a really valuable a really valuable time, we want you to come prepared for those conferences. There was a game plan survey that was sent out prior to the break and prior to the new year, and they're still accessible. They're Google Forms where you can fill out some information. That's why your counselor is able to do some research ahead of time, get an understanding of maybe where you are at right now, understanding that may or may not change, and feel a bit more prepared and ready for your conversation. So it is a productive conversation. If you're planning for college, there is a section on Naviance called Colleges I'm Thinking About, and adding colleges on there is definitely an important part of this. We'll go over a little bit of that later. But again, it just helps with research. It allows your counselor to come prepared with maybe schools that are similar to schools you're already thinking about, and test scores if you've taken that, but it's still rather early. So those are kind of, let me step back here. That's really the overview for your conference. Your counselor is going to go way more thoroughly into this throughout the the time with you in that period. But if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to your counselor directly in order to either get scheduled, figure out some things along those lines. So without further ado, that's kind of some housekeeping for getting these conversations, the personalized conversations set up. We are now going to be talking about all of the pathways that exist to our students after Chatham. Really, the important thing, and excuse me, I will be taking pauses because it's you just have me tonight. So sorry, and it is we have a lot of things to discuss, and I have the classic cold that everyone has right now, so I will be taking sips here and there in between slides. So we want to talk about choosing your pathway. It's really important to think about what you want to do, right? It's easy to just do groupthink, what everyone else is doing. But I post some questions here that, when you go to Magic Fountain, do you all get the same vanilla ice cream on a cone? Probably not, right? You need to find different brands of jeans that fit you better than the brand that fits your best friend, right? So there are things that may work for the friends in your life, the peers in your life, but you need to really think about what is important to you and focus on that, because that is really what we're measuring success as is happiness, and that you're pursuing the things that are going to make you happy, and not necessarily other people or other peers, because we know that can be we were all teenagers. We know that can be really stressful. But again, don't order the same sandwich at Pascarella's that your friend's getting, because even though you hate roast beef, I don't know, really bad example, but you know what I mean. So we put together a graphic here of a menu of options for you to kind of peruse of what you have available to you. So we're going to go over, again, the majority of this conversation, because the content is very dense and there's a lot of that content is about the college process. But we are going to touch a little bit upon each of these. And please know, your counselors, myself, of course, we are very well versed in all of these menu items. There are items listed on here that are not listed and do exist and are possibilities for you, but we can absolutely have individual conversations with you. Just because a lot of time isn't given to the military conversation tonight does not mean it's not a viable and excellent option for some of you, ROTC, things like that. So we can always have offline conversations about that. So I think the most important thing to distinguish is kind of a conversation between college degrees. So there is a bachelor's degree and there's an associate's degree. And a lot of students don't necessarily know the difference. So with a bachelor's degree, that is what we know traditionally as a four-year college, although I just gave 3 fingers, 4-year college, although it doesn't always take 4 years. Sometimes it takes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, but that's what we know it traditionally as. You can get a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science, or a Bachelor of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Music, a lot of other ones, but those are your kind of more popular ones. A Bachelor of Art usually is about 50% of your time is spent on maybe a major you're choosing, and the other 50% is more generally studied. A Bachelor of Science is usually about 70-30, so a bit more focused on your major. You see a lot of science degrees in that, hence Bachelor of Science. science, but it is possible in other degrees, and usually it's a couple more credits. And Bachelor of Fine Arts is usually 100%, kind of Bachelor of Music as well, where you're truly focused on that topic and you're probably not going to steer away from that. There are differences between public and private schools in terms of funding that might be available, state funding, funding to you, size, right? I put these two examples for New Jersey schools, as Rutgers being a public institution, which is very large and state funded, and Seton Hall being a private school, which is, it's not teeny tiny, but it's not certainly as large as Rutgers. You don't need to take buses to get to your Seton Hall classes. So there are differences. And it's obvious for some, but maybe not for others, because it's new to you, is the difference between the bachelor's degree and associate's degree is bachelor's degree will require specific admission requirements. It is not open enrollment, which leads us to talk about an associate's degree, which you probably know as the County College of Morris, which is the institution locally that offers those. Union County College is also pretty popular as well, and a couple other around here. But that is a foundational degree. It has open enrollment. So basically their idea is we want to offer education to anyone that is willing to do it and wants to put in the work. There are educational requirements and expectations of you. So you can't just get in and just kind of shoot the breeze. They are going to hold you up to a certain standard, because everyone's like, oh, well, then if it's easy, you're just going to get in and it's going to be easy the whole time. You do have to meet a certain standard in order to stay, but in order to be admitted, they want it to be accessible to everybody and for everyone to have that opportunity. There are a lot of benefits, as I've listed there. There's a graphic here where you can kind of see, this is a little older now, 2020, but you can see a kind of a cost breakdown from USAA of how, the cost savings between an average of public in-state versus a 4-year, 2-year kind of plan. One thing I will emphasize that we often talk about is the 2+2 program, which we really encourage students to take advantage of. It's usually you're spending 2 years at community college, which is about the time that you are receiving your associate's degree. And then by that time, they have transfer counselors there. You're working with them to transfer your credits over to an institution of your choice. So whether that be, let's say, Rutgers again, Wake Forest, University of Michigan, any of those kind of places where you can transfer over and finish your bachelor's degree, you are getting your degree ultimately from University of Michigan. It's not going to have an asterisk next to it that says 2 years at CCM or something like that. You are finishing that and you're transferring as that. So that can be a really great option for a lot of reasons, like especially listed below in the benefits. Maybe your grades weren't super stellar in college and University of Michigan is not accessible to you right now because it's a hard school to get into. But maybe you increase your grades in community college and it allows you to open your, options up way more plentiful options, if you will. So we can talk, I don't know, we're not going to spend a lot of time on these, but we can talk way more specifically about these if you'd like to dive into that option. And then additional pathways, you have vocational or trade school, gap year or employment, military branches as well, and apprenticeship is also an option. There are other things you can do on here, but these are usually some really popular ones that we see for students who are thinking of something alternatively. I have a note image here with Grow with Google. Some people see commercials now. It's very popular. Google offers these certification programs and folks are coming out of that with, median salaries of like $60,000 and things like that. And that's through a certificate, right? So there are different ways to meet your goals and your needs. And it doesn't always have to be through the traditional 4-year college process. That is totally up to you in a conversation between you, your family, and, important people that can help you with those conversations, just like myself. So we like to recognize that those exist, but we also do recognize that you'll see in our data shortly that the majority of our students are going on to that 4-year college pathway. And that's why we do spend that time on that conversation. Okay, so college placement trends, as I segue into that very nicely. So we like to present some data just to give you an idea of where the previous class has been. Not too much, right? Because we don't want to get into the thick of it. You could pull your hair out looking into all of these things. And we do have more information on our, report of the graduates and also on our school report. But we like to show here that, in pretty consistently, as I said, we recognize that students at Chatham are generally looking to go on to that 4-year traditional college. So you can see it stayed pretty much the same throughout. and still around the same, even when we were in kind of 2020 pandemic world there. So pretty consistent interest in trends here at Chatham. This one, we crunched the numbers of our class of 2023 and something we include in our report of graduates, but we like to show you all here. Again, just to give you an idea of what your peers before you kind of were doing. So we see a lots of applications that we send out. Our counselors work super hard, and so do our administrative staff. So we're super lucky to do over 3,000 applications pretty consistently every year. A lot of acceptances to go along with that. You see some average acceptances. A 65% over 50% median acceptance rate is really great. We're super happy about that. And you'll see a breakdown on the right of the slide, different early action, early decision options. So there is still that regular decision application pool, which is what folks, maybe moms and dads or guardians might know was the only option back then, right? So things have evolved. We will talk a lot more about these as you are becoming rising seniors and towards the end of your junior year, so you'll know the differentiations if you're not already familiar. But just to give you a breakdown of kind of what we were seeing in trends. This slide is something that our counseling office, we really like, because we think, and we preach it often, and you'll hear it often, that intentionality in your college list and process is going to be your best friend. And we think that shows in the numbers here. So obviously there are students that have aspirations for some really, really high level schools. We even call them lottery schools. We'll talk about different tiers later. And so you have to throw out a lot of applications there, of course, but we really see success for students who are applying to a very intentional list, applying to schools that they've done the research on, they visited, they know. And you can see from these numbers that the more we're seeing higher percentages of acceptance for students who are being intentional with that list. So, an 83% acceptance rate for students who applied from 1 to 4 schools. That's not to say you have to do that, and that's a magic kind of combination. It just, what that tells us in research and knowing some students is that those students were likely very intentional in identifying schools that were going to be, would admit them. They have students similar to them, and they kind of didn't want to, waste their time or maybe the time of the other schools by applying to others. So we like to see this because we don't want to see people pulling their hair out and applying to 40 colleges and things like that, right? There's things to enjoy in senior year beyond that. So just another interesting data point we like to show here. So I like to before setting the tone on kind of more of the nitty gritty of where we're at with college trends and application things to think about, it's really important to put things into perspective. So managing expectations and recognizing that some things are out of your control. And this process are going to be items that will help you be really successful. It can be a difficult process, but it can also be super exciting and really fun. You want to put your best foot forward and control what you can, and know that some things are out of your control, right? So I have underlined here that some colleges are business. They have, or not some, they are all businesses, right? They want to keep their doors open in order for you to come and study at their school, which is excellent. They are great education. Higher education is an excellent thing to strive for, but they need to pay the bills, right? So they have demographics, they have things from higher up that they have directives that they need to look for, and you can't control those metrics. So perhaps one year they had too many students, they enrolled more students from Pennsylvania than they expected, so perhaps they're not going to enroll or accept as many Pennsylvania students. You as a student, you as a parent or guardian can't control that metric. And so while that is frustrating, of course, we recognize that, it's good to kind of go in with that mindset and try to know that there's some things that are out of your control. We talked about this a little bit earlier, having an open mind, focus on your path and your plan, and try not to concern yourself with others' paths, but it can be very difficult to do. We talked about that intentional college list. So, if you are just applying to a school just to see if you could get accepted, we would urge you to really just think about, really focusing your time, money, all that things on schools that you genuinely would have an interest in attending if you were accepted there. Sometimes I like to say, if let's pretend, which is not a fun pretending game, let's pretend you only were accepted to this one school. Would you rather go there? Would you rather work, go to community college, and maybe transfer. And if the answer is the latter, those things, then maybe you shouldn't be applying to that school in general, right? And try to enjoy. Like I said, it can be a little bit stressful, but it isn't exciting. There are tons of institutions in the US alone, not to mention the world. So you will find a great spot, and we're definitely committed to helping you get there and figure out what that is. So just a couple of admission trends that we've noticed over the years and things you might have heard in conversations with parents with older children, or you have just gone through this process. It's kind of no surprise there that access to application materials and tools has increased our application value or the application numbers out there. So I have a couple bullet points here. Rutgers this year was not on the Common Application, which is as it sounds, a universal application tool that allows you to apply to many schools pretty seamlessly. Rutgers was not on it previously. They're on it this year, and they've already, as of December 2023, seen a 52% increase in apps they had from this time last year, so December 2022. In Auburn's another example that they saw, 155% increase in their applications from fall 2022, from fall 2020 to fall 2022. 155% increase is intense. And then UCLA is always our friend that takes the top spot. They have close to 146,000 applications for only 8,000 spots, right? So when you think about it, and that's for just freshmen alone, they have more applications for all their other programs out there. But that's kind of to the point before managing those expectations. There's so many excellent students out there, but if of the 145,000 applying for those 8,000 spots, there are students that are going to be disappointed, and it just is part of the process, unfortunately. So that leans itself to the next bullet of, what used to be a target school, which we'll talk about shortly. That might have changed, that might have altered. We certainly, not to keep picking on Auburn, and it's not picking on it, it's a good school, but we used to advise students that, oh yeah, that's probably pretty likely you're going to get in that school. But when you see a school have a 155% increase in applications, that may alter their expectations and their standards in terms of needing to limit those options. So just having an open mind about those acceptance rates and admission expectations. On that same note of acceptance rates and increased applications, schools being test optional, meaning SAT or ACT college prep tests, that changes things a lot as well. We will talk about that in a few slides. A lot of colleges will focus, I'll just go through these last three bullets. Happy to talk more in depth about them with folks, or our counselors, again, are privy to this information as well. Yield protection, a lot of colleges are using tactics now like deferrals. If you have any senior friends, you'd be hard pressed to find a senior friend who applied to college who has not been deferred somewhere, because deferrals are very, very common, as are wait lists. So colleges are making sure that their yield is the class, the students they are bringing in for their fall 2024 class, and they want to make sure that they are getting they're meeting their numbers. They're not over enrolling, because then, oops, we have no more space for you. And that's where you see friends who sometimes are living in hotel rooms because they have no more residence halls, right? And you don't want to see schools under enrolling their class. So deferral is a way of making sure you're still very interested in their school, waiting to see senior year grades, stuff that we're talking with seniors all right now. And wait lists are kind of that same thing. Oh, I skipped ahead, the test optional. So obviously there is a bullet there. So we'll talk more about that later. And we're seeing more, because there's less metrics to measure by, quantitative metrics like a test score. You're seeing schools focusing more on a qualitative review. So how are you spending your time outside of the classroom? And that does not have to be president of 50 clubs. It could be working. It's truly how are you spending your time outside of the classroom? So that's just a couple of mission trends. We try to keep a pulse on those things as they're coming and going, and obviously we'll keep you updated on those things as well. A few bullet points we'll cover that are in these slides coming up that aren't in the summary admission trends, but just some things to keep in mind. So when we're talking about applying, we want to talk about telling your story and creating a strong profile. So everything on this little book here, the storybook that is going to be your application, are the items that go into your college application. These are things that with seniors, the tangible items we are we were in the fall working with of inserting into applications, writing in essays, all these kind of things. These are items you can be thinking about now or starting to really think about. How do my courses, are they appropriate? Do they reflect my interests? What would I write an essay about if I had the time? How do I spend my time outside of school? Those types of things. So this is just kind of to give you an overview of those metrics that will be used in your application. And you can kind of start just plotting those in your head about, or even writing them down on a piece of paper or iPad or notepad, notes in your phone of these are the things I do or the things I want to highlight under those categories, because really the colleges want to hear your story and they want to know, and all of these things make up the story, qualitative and quantitative pieces here. So when we're talking about where we're at right now, especially with our juniors, and we recognize everyone is in different phases of the process. Sometimes you have an older sibling, so you hopped on all the college tours, so you're kind of advanced in that because you were just going along with your older sibling to all these types of things, and you saw that process. Some folks that are on with us tonight, likely this might be the first time going through the process, or you haven't done it in a really long time. So we like to give suggestions, and we're happy to help keep you on track and those types of things. So where we're kind of going to focus on right now is just thinking about determining a fit for a school, and how do you even start with a list, right? It's easy to talk about all these schools, but how do you know what school you want to apply to, where to apply to, all these types of things. So when we talk about fit, we talk about a college that matches a lot of dimensions. So obviously you need to have, or you want to have, a school that's going to be academically challenging for you, or an appropriate academic challenge for you, and get you on the path of where you want to go after your time there. But you also need to think about the social, the geographical side of things, the financial side of things are super important. How big and small are usually big conversations, because it's really important. If you are not happy, you're going to be living there most likely, unless you're commuting, and you need to be happy and healthy living there. If those things aren't in place and you're not happy with your living situation or your social life, then the academics likely won't follow through, right? So we want to make sure that not only are you thinking about, is this school a great academic fit for me as well, would it also contribute to me having like a happy, healthy life outside of that? Because those things go hand in hand to make sure you're kind of getting this full picture. So these are just a couple things to think about when determining fit, and fit's going to look different for everyone. A part of understanding, so usually you're going to start, and your counselor will talk about this. You might start with a massive list. I've seen students who've had a colleges I'm thinking about list of like 60 colleges, because they would hear it in a movie or they talk to a friend and they just add it to their list, and they would, check it off and start to really fine tune it. That is fine. We are playing around. We're window shopping, as I say here. You're factoring in a lot of things, and that's kind of the play, the shopping of it all that you're doing. We're not necessarily buying anything yet, but you are thinking about things that you like or would like on you, if you will. So researching and visiting campuses is going to be a really big part of being able to see yourself there, see if that's a school you like. We still have seniors that are doing that currently to help with that understanding of those things. If you are very early on in the process and we're saying, well, do you want a big or small campus? Sometimes you don't know the answer, right? You only know what you know. You know, Chatham High School, you have about 300 kids in your class, and it's hard to know, do I like big? Do I like small? So I always recommend using New Jersey as I say, your shopping mall. If you may not want to attend a New Jersey school, and that's fine. There are a lot of great schools here that you can attend. But if you don't want to, throw thousands of dollars to go to South Carolina, for say, to tour all these schools to figure out a big versus small school, you have a ton of schools all within like a 45-minute to an hour radius to just drive through, maybe take tours. But, you could go visit Rutgers and see a really big college campus. If that overwhelms you, then maybe that narrows down your fit to know, okay, anything under this amount. You could go to Ramapo, and you could see their campus. They're a little bit smaller, more medium sized, right? So if that feels good to you, kind of like a Goldilocks situation, right? So maybe you don't have that intention of applying to a New Jersey school, but we do have this nice, really cross sampling of a lot of different big, small, urban, suburban, that you could probably get an idea and apply maybe to other states before like I said, hopping on that plane to South Carolina to kind of try to find all those out. So there are ways that you can really narrow this down. And if you can't visit, one benefit of not that there are many benefits of the pandemic, but colleges became very virtually dependent on selling their school. And so there are a lot of sites out there on our website we have too for you can try a virtual visit, an information session. UVisit has a lot of great tours you can take so that you are able to get an idea before actually investing in that visit. And on the note of visiting and going to information sessions for campuses. Some schools, you may have heard of this term before, track something called demonstrated interest, which is kind of, context clues. It's basically seeing how interested are you in me as a school, and that might determine how interested we are in you as an applicant. Sometimes they track those visits or attendance at virtual events or on campus events. But that is becoming less and less popular. There are schools that are out there, but it never hurts to ask very simply, whether it's an email or you're on a tour, is demonstrated interest something you track? Because that is one way to know that you are, to help get yourself a little bit of an edge for a campus if they are tracking that. I equate it kind of to like dating when I talk to students. If you have a crush on someone, so if you have a crush on, I'm going to keep saying Rutgers, and you don't tell Rutgers, they're never going to know or never ask you on a date, right? So if you are, it's important to show that demonstrated interest if that school is tracking. Now, in this example was a silly example. Rutgers does not track demonstrated interest. But it allows you to kind of maybe get that date, right? And AKA that application offer extended to you. So something to keep in mind, but in the back of your head. But again, a lot of schools are not doing that because there are some access issues and it's not super equitable of a practice. But some schools do that. So it's helpful to know. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, having an intentional list, but then also wanting to have that list be a healthy list, as we call it. So we like to identify schools as target schools, likely schools, and reach schools. Likely schools sometimes are called safety schools, but we don't always love to call safety because it's hard to really be super reliant and let your guard down in this kind of process. You always, like I said, manage those expectations and keep an open mind. But you generally want to we have criteria here that you can see, about 1 to 2 schools in that area. A target school is really where you want to spend most of your time in applications, meaning you've identified schools that have accepted students similar to the student that you are. And then reach schools are those schools that you might be dreaming about. They have a higher application criteria than maybe what you have in high school, but perhaps you think you have something you can bring to that, and you just want to see, right? And it's okay to have those schools. It's just a matter of self-preservation and making sure you're understanding that there's a lot of that competition out there, and having this healthy list, right? Having variety. If you had only reach schools, that would be a bit of a scary list and certainly not a healthy list, because we want you to come to May or April of your senior year with options because you have that healthy range of schools. And it's easy for us to say, okay, here, get these healthy ranges, but a lot of students go, how do I know, right? What those, how do I know if it's a target school for me or likely school or reach school? And that can be really hard to identify. We have a slide here that we've used for many years now of just not saying you need to do a chart like this, but this is just kind of a visual representation to show you. The bottom gray scale is, we'll say me in this example, that I have a GPA of 3.8 and an ACT score of a 30. And I've identified these 4 schools as schools that I'm really interested in. So what I did was I pulled their very small, there's a lot more metrics you should probably be looking at, but these top 3 metrics that I identified I needed to know to get an understanding of where I fall within their admitted student profile. So the boxes under the blue arrow are the admitted student profiles, most recent that we have. And then the top are the schools. And I myself, using just, knowledge and looking at data, lost for words, have identified whether it's a reach, likely, or target school. So you can, I think, you can kind of interpret these yourself in terms of how we came to those terms. I like to point to the Johns Hopkins and Villanova. All four schools in here are excellent schools. It really is what you make of it, of your experience at those schools. But it's easy to get fooled by, let's say, Johns Hopkins, where they're reporting their GPA is a 3.9 average GPA, but their acceptance rate is a 9%. So they're getting a ton of applications, right? And so even though I have a GPA only 0.1 lower, I really need to be hesitant and also aware, not hesitant, but again, aware, and know that my ACT score is 5 points lower than that, right? So again, these examples of these reaches does not mean I myself with my metrics cannot apply. It just means you need to manage your expectations in terms of the competition you're going to be met with when you are applying. Okay, so before we dive into some standardized testing stuff, I am going to take a sip, so just pardon me. So standardized testing has been a very, very hot topic. It's been a hot topic even before COVID entered our lives, but that really escalated the conversation. And I promise we're not going to spend a lot of time on COVID because 4 years we're moving on. But it has completely brought the test optional venue, right to the front of everyone's kind of mind and conversations. So now schools really fall into three categories. They're either test optional, you have a choice to submit or not; test free, where a school doesn't want them at all. You could have gotten a perfect score, but if you apply to a test free school, they won't look at it and they don't want it. And then test required or recommended. You're seeing not very many schools that need the test required, but there are. And oftentimes they are required by their state. The state requires that to be a metric for admission, or there are factors like that in laws and things like that require that. And recommended is just semantics of language, but it is always, if they say recommended, it's probably a good idea to submit. Recommendation is always a good thing to do. The graphic you can see that to the right is there's over 1,800 schools that are ACT and SAT optional for this past fall. It's probably going to keep increasing. And interestingly enough, there's 80 plus test free entirely, which is a metric I'm surprised to see rising. And this can be really good. Not every student is a strong test taker, right? It is. When I was in admissions, we always said I worked at Ithaca College, and that has been test optional for a bajillion years, way before COVID made it cool. Our philosophy always was that we would rather look at, 365 days of you as a student working. I know the school year is not long, but you working really hard and focusing on your craft day to day, rather than one day in a sweaty gym where you took a test at 7 a.m. And so that, again, that's each school's philosophy. Some schools don't feel that way, and it just totally depends. And that's part of your fit and part of what you're going to be looking at when you are applying. So what we do see ends up happening, though, is that test scores now that are being submitted are, of course, those that are people who are super proud of their test score. So that skews the numbers they are reporting. So they're going to say, okay, our accepted students SAT score range was this to this, and that's going to be higher than it was in 2019 or 2020, because now that students have an option, those who aren't maybe super proud of their score are just not going to submit it. Just because they weren't super proud of their score doesn't mean they would not have been admitted, right? So it just doesn't factor into their metrics anymore. It's something that doesn't currently have a solution to that problem, right? Are they just going to keep going up and up? Something I know in higher ed they're discussing. So the rule of thumb that we hear from admission officers and we recommend to our students is, still submit to schools based on the ranges they're showing you. And I'll show you a slide that is about, admitted student profile from colleges and things like that, so you can get an idea of that reporting. All in all, we recommend that regardless of test-free schools or test-optional schools, regardless of if you hate testing, that you at least try to take a test, because it's always good to have a score in your back pocket. If you go to a school on your way to vacation and you absolutely fall in love with it and you realize, oh my gosh, they require tests, and you don't have a test, that would be sad, right? We don't want that to come to you. So at least you'll have a test score. But a couple more slides here to talk about that. The last slide I have on testing is the next slide. We only have 3 slides on it, so I'll talk about this first, and then I'll talk about some tips and tricks to summarize these 3 slides here. One of the big trends and big things happening in higher ed is now just with everything is moving digital, right? All these college entrance exams are moving digital as well. We actually held the digital PSAT this past fall. We've held 8 digital AP exams this past spring, and they all, knock on wood, have gone relatively really well. Starting this spring, the SAT is going to be exclusively digital. There will be no paper pencil options for students, and ACT is hopping on the bandwagon because they have to compete, right? And they currently have an option of digital at certain locations, and but still have that paper pencil option. So something to keep in mind. And we will send out resources for these as we are, learning with this new digital process as well, that, the different testing apps they're going to use, so you can practice with those. Us older folk, the students who are on this, are probably make a way more bigger deal out about this, because you all are probably like not even blinking an eye. It doesn't even bother you to be doing it this way. And that's the experience we've seen in administering the test, is that you all are super competent about doing it and have no issues on the digital platform. So, if you have questions about that, reach out to us when we're happy to talk. But we, in some cases, as for ACT, for example, we're learning as you are as well about some of their releases. I have a graphic here that's just a breakdown of the SAT versus the ACT for differences, because sometimes students want to know which one they should take. In some cases, students take one SAT and one ACT just to get an idea of which one they liked better, and maybe they'll take a third test, and that's the test they liked better. Just an example, not the way you have to do it. For example, ACT has a science section. If you're not a science person, maybe you don't even touch that. Totally up to you. So kind of in summary, testing tips, we do recommend, depending on your, the courses you've been taking, that spring of your junior year is a good time to be taking it. It gives you the spring, it gives you the summer, and if you really want more time, it gives you the fall of your senior year before applications. Usually by that time, students have received all of the information they need to be successful on those tests. So that's also why we recommend that. We don't want you going into a test if you haven't learned that concept yet in class. Excuse me. Go with the test you're stronger or prefer. Registering early is, very important. It usually closes about a month before the date. At the end of our presentation, we have some slides that have the dates for the upcoming SAT and ACT registration dates. Show yourself grace, don't overthink things, and overtesting is a real thing. You usually see a score increase from your test 1 to test 2 because you got all the jitters out, you figured it out, you kind of know what you're doing. But usually once you're, test 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, anything beyond that, you're usually seeing a marginal increase. So sometimes at that point, it's just laborious. It's just adding a lot to you when you maybe should be experiencing Cougar Weekend or things like that, right? So just really kind of focus and show yourself some grace. On the right, we have test offerings, or I'm showing you test offerings. For some reason, the college gods have decided that on certain months, the SAT and ACT offer their tests. So as you can see in February coming up, there is no SAT. It's only offered by the ACT, and similarly with March. So just be aware of that, so that you're not saying, oh yeah, I'm going to take the ACT in March, and it's not offered. This spring, we are still working out details, but we will be offering an SAT school day. The SAT and ACT are typically held on Saturdays, but given the digital nature of the exam and security features and things like that with our internet network, we will be focusing on an SAT school day and trying that out this year. So more info will be coming out. It will be this spring, and we'll keep you updated on that. So that will be exclusively for Chatham High School students. All right, so there's more time to talk about college funding. We could be here all night talking about this topic, and we actually had, it is on our website, we had a college funding evening presentation that was recorded this past fall, which was super helpful, especially because there are a lot of changes to FAFSA, the free application for student aid and state aid, the government kind of side of things. So it's just, I like to add this in here, that it's never too early to start the conversation. A lot of times people will do the search, the applications, the visiting, and then they do the college funding conversation. And sometimes that can end up with a lot of heartbreak because you realize that maybe that wasn't the best financial thought, or it's not something as attainable as you thought it was. So these are just a couple suggestions for you to do. Here's a link to an article I think that's nice for students to kind of have a conversation with your guardians about paying for college. And on the bottom left, there is something called the net price calculator. It is actually mandated by law. President Obama instituted it many years ago. Every college needs to have one. There is just a government side of it too. You can enter the school's name and you enter in just a couple things. It's not as detailed as the FAFSA, but you enter in some metrics about yourself and your financials, and it will give you an estimated cost of attendance at those schools. So there is a possible way to try to get an idea. You won't obviously know for sure, but as you're doing your search and you're thinking about the fit and geography and social and academics, this is an important aspect to fit as well, and you can research those things. So Naviance Student, if you're not familiar, is a great tool that we use. We've been using it for many, many years, and it's our college and career tool. I am going to include, otherwise, again, similar with the college funding, we would be here all night doing a demo of this tool. In the message that goes out with this recording, we are going to include videos that walk you through exactly, as I mentioned before, how to add colleges to your colleges I'm thinking about list, how to research colleges, the research tools on the website and things like that. So rather than doing a live demo here tonight, I will send you those videos in the package with the recording and some other resources so that you can kind of look through those things. Your counselor also, depending on, can walk you through this tool. You'll probably be in Naviance looking at it together, but it is very user-friendly and again, has been around for a very long time for our students. So definitely recommend you use that. Oh, I cut ahead of it. So this is the things Naviance can do for you. Here are those videos I was pointing to. There's things beyond just college, career exploration and assessments, resume tools, stuff like that that can be helpful. There also can be a parent or guardian account. So if that is something that interests you, some parents and guardians just go in through their student's account. But if that's something that interests you, please feel free to email myself or your counselor, and we can get that set up for you as well. All right, so like I said, list building, it's easy to say all these metrics and terms, but list building, you need tools to help you do that. So there are a couple tools I listed here. Scattergrams is a tool you may have heard. It is through Naviance. It is plot. I'm going to show you a screenshot on the next slide. It plots different admission metrics for you to understand and help you kind of manage those expectations. Another piece of information is admitted student profiles. Almost every college releases admitted student profile. You can see the screenshots on the bottom that's a class, an example from Quinnipiac, their admitted student profile. They kind of cleanly put on there, which is nice, how many applications, their average GPA, average SAT score. So this is an example of something I may Google and look up to help with that chart I did earlier, right? So, Naviance has useful information, but it could always be helpful to simply, as I put in that bullet there, search college name plus admitted student profile in order to see what they're reporting. And that's how you're going to be able to see, do I fall in target with that school? Is that school a likely school for me? Potentially, is that a reach, kind of thing like that. So the bottom arrow here is just, again, limitations and things to keep in mind, that schools are test optional, college metrics, student specifics, things that are out of your control, right? So just things to keep in mind when you're building that list and creating that fit. So here is an example of those two of the scattergrams I was telling you about. You can navigate to those under each college's site, or not site, page, excuse me, in Naviance. So I have two examples here, the top one being Drexel. And if you're not familiar with scattergrams, it can be a little bit hard to see, but again, these slides will be sent out to you. There is a light blue person where those dotted lines, those dotted marching ants are going, and that is measuring you or plotting you on the scale. And so when I look at Drexel, I see a very favorable, a very happy scattergram in terms of you and your metrics, your test score, your GPA. You're surrounded by other students who have been accepted from Chatham High School with that information. So that tells me that that school is, a likely school, if not a target school, pending some other factors, right? You don't want to go just based on that. But that is a really happy scattergram. We like that scattergram, lots of green. When you look down to BC, again, a very good school, just like Drexel. It's kind of hard to see my plot point because there are a lot of denials, wait lists, things like that that are plotted there. You can't see the guide, the legend, because I screenshot it, but there is a legend on each one that goes through all of these different icons, because I know there's the checks and then checks with squares and then stuff like that. It will really break down, students who've applied with early action, students who were applied and deferred, that kind of stuff. So I show these two examples to say, again, this bottom scattergram of BC, just for my personal metrics, it's not super favorable. It's not the happiest of scattergrams, right? There's a lot of red, there's some blue, which is kind of up in the air there, usually waitlist type of situation. You have to check the legend, of course. So that tells me this is likely a reach school, right? So this is just an example of two fields to help you make those determinations, because not only do we want to tell you, you need all these things, you need good fit, you need all this stuff. We want to help you know how to identify those things too. And that can be overwhelming at times. So using tools like scattergrams, admitted student profiles, things along those lines are going to be helpful in you categorizing that healthy target and reach school, and our tools that we use and as counselors and things along those lines. So just a few more slides here as we kind of near the end. I know it's a lot of information and a lot of me talking at you, but like I said, we're all happy to have those conversations, and the junior conference is designed specifically for follow-up and all of this type of stuff. So we have our college and career planning website, which has a lot of resources. There's a junior forms and resources section where we will add likely this recording, other links and things like that. So if you remember, I talked about the game plan survey way earlier in this conversation to prepare for your junior conference. That can be found under the junior forums and resources. So a lot of things available there. If you're not at school, you don't have the time, it's the weekend and you want to access some things. So we definitely recommend you do that. Here are some upcoming events just to be aware of. If you're not familiar with NACAC, it stands for the National Association of College Admissions Counselors. So it is the nation's professional organization that puts out a lot of professional development and also opportunities for students to connect with colleges. So New Jersey, NACAC has national college fairs. They have one in New Jersey and one in New York City. The dates are both on there. They run pretty much all day, like morning to evening. So that's something you can register to attend. And essentially you are getting hundreds of schools that are all in one spot, one convention center. So it's kind of quick one-stop shopping and can help narrow down, talk to admission reps, things along those lines. We do every spring. We have a college program, whether it be a panel, a speaker, things along those lines that is designed for our junior families, but we open up to other grade levels as well. That will be in the spring, and more details will come forward once we decide what is the best presentation to put forward for everyone. Also, going back to the fairs on the bottom right there are virtual college fairs as well. So if you don't want to go to in person, NACAC sponsors 3 upcoming for the spring virtual college fairs for you to kind of, again, window shop. And at the bottom here, you can see I listed, as I mentioned before, that we will be offering an SAT school day this spring. We will be sharing information very soon about that. And please note that if you are looking for the February ACT or March SAT, there are deadlines coming up shortly for registration. January 5th in particular, right around the corner. If you don't want to accrue late fees and you want to take the February ACT. So in summary, kind of like to wrap up this presentation with just almost kind of like a to-do list, but these are things that it is January, what's today's date? January 3rd. There is much time to come before you are a rising senior, and it's important to enjoy that, focus on grades and putting your best foot forward. But let's say you have some free time in the upcoming winter break or spring break or a weekend, and you want to start working on things. This is something to look at, to chip away at. So this will also be, covered in your junior conference. You're going to be given, if you would like a hard copy, a packet of an overview packet that we give with many pages of all this stuff we reviewed. It's also will be accessible on our website. But, think about the things that you want, do that window shopping, utilize Naviance as a tool for tracking colleges you're thinking about. And like I said, even with, you could have tons of schools on there and just narrow it down. You can transfer them over to the schools that you actually are more serious about. Schedule that junior conference. It's so important and super helpful, and complete that game plan. When you're ready, and if it's necessary, schedule a standardized test for the time being. And your counselor will talk about these more in depth. But on May 1st, again, very far from now, and you'll get reminders, we have 2 items, brag sheets that we call both of them, that we'll need you to fill out, and also a parent and guardian. And these things, these sheets, they're on Naviance, and they're pretty easy to fill out. The tasks were just assigned to you on Naviance, so you can easily access it. But again, many months to do that. These tools allow you to fill out information about yourself and things that you think your counselor may not know, or things you want highlighted in your college letters of recommendation, because your assigned school counselor will be writing a college letter of recommendation for you to go with all of your applications, in addition to teachers you might ask, things like that. So that's at the bottom there, the forward thinking, asking teachers about letters of recommendation, thinking about your essay. We have a summer roadmap that we'll be pushing out to you as we get closer to the warmer months. But please just remember, these things will be covered in your junior conference. You can ask these questions, and just because, junior conference does not have to be end all be all. You can still reach out, ask questions, things like that. Just know there are varying timeframes. You may be, just as I said in the beginning, digesting this information for the first time. You may already have some college on your list. You may already be scheduled for your conference. There is no right or wrong here. We are happy to meet you wherever you are at. There's a reason the junior conference scheduling window, and actually they happen for such a wide window. We do them through January for those who are super eager to get started, and we have them in March. Sometimes folks have them in April, depending on where you're at and ready, because we want to make sure that your needs are being met. And just because it starts in January doesn't mean everyone needs to be in January. You might be a winter athlete and you're playing basketball and you're busy doing that, right? And then so you have time more in March to think about these conversations. We will get you up to speed, and if it's really that important to you, you will get yourself up to speed as well. So please be kind to yourself, and know that everyone's path looks a little bit different, and especially this process. So that is all we have for this evening. I know that was a lot of information. As I said many times, we will be sharing this recording out along with an email package of a lot of other tidbits, links, and pieces of information that you'll want to take away with you and know before going into your junior conference. If you have any questions, if you have any questions, please, as I said, don't hesitate to reach out to your counselor or to myself as well. We do like to take a very team focus here and team process to supporting students. So often, working with your counselor is the first line of communication is the best way to start, because they have a more a longer relationship with you and can kind of start that out. But it's certainly possible for us to collaborate and things like that in order to support you and make sure you are going on the direction that you'd like to be, whether it's college, other alternative options, things along those lines. So more to come. You will probably be sick of seeing my email in all of your inbox, junior students. I'm very sorry, but more information will come as you embark on this exciting time. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a great rest of your week, and Happy New Year.